Welcome back to Midco Sports Tonight. We just showed you the weekend's highlights from around the Northern Sun. Now to break those games down a little more, we bring in our NSIC expert, David Brown. So David, we saw in the highlights, it was everything from blowout wins to double overtime with Wayne State and UMD. But what do you think was the most impressive win of the weekend?
Which what you just mentioned, it's Minnesota Duluth over Wayne State in double overtime. Just consider the circumstances. UMD earlier in the week had lost its starting quarterback and its leading returning receiver for the season in Mike Robarczyk and Nate Ricci. Bulldogs also 1-2, an unfamiliar place for any Duluth team to be below 500. So going on the road to Wayne State, which has showcased a high-powered offense and blocking a game-winning field goal in overtime, and then kicking the eventual game winner yourself, that is a gut check win for UMD. And now they have a little bit of momentum heading into division play. It's an absolutely ginormous win for Minnesota. There's a big difference, I'm sure, as you know, on those long bus rides between being 1-3 and 2-2, and UMD is 2-2. They have the momentum heading into this weekend.
Yeah, they definitely needed that. But looking at another game, UMary and Upper Iowa. Upper Iowa defeats the Marauders 58-14, moves them to 3-1. They've already matched their win total from last season with those 3 wins. So is Upper Iowa legit?
I think they are. Now, keep in mind the South Division is going to be tough no matter what. But what sets Upper Iowa apart, to me, from some of the other teams is the offensive diversity that they showcase. Quarterback Brent Lammers taken over as starter for the first time this season. He looks great orchestrating the run-pass option offense. He's got a big arm and big legs, and teams have to account for that. They have a superstar wide receiver on the outside in Jared Edmonds, who was 2 yards off of his career high last week in receiving yardage, and they have a stable of running backs. Ryan Parmley is their veteran. They have a new guy, John DePrey, and Antoine Connor, a USD transfer. He didn't play last week because of a concussion, but he showcased his athleticism. So if you combine all of that with an offensive line that averages more than 300 pounds up front, Upper Iowa has the ability to be a top offense in this league. Now, there's still some inconsistency on defense, but if they fall behind, they certainly have the firepower to catch up. So the South Division, unquestionably the toughest division of the two, but Upper Iowa does have the firepower to maintain itself.
And that firepower, I think Lammers got Player of the Week.
He did get Player of the Week. He had 5 total touchdowns. Up until that point, he only had 4 in the first 3 games. So
all right, so he really stepped it up. Well, good for him. Well, looking ahead to this weekend, actually this week, Thursday and Saturday, what do you think is the biggest matchup? Well,
not to be too much of a shill, but it's our Thursday game of the week. It's St. Cloud State, Minnesota Duluth. Huskies are the only team above 500 still in the NSIC North. They're 3-1 coming off a win at home against Augustana. And in previous weeks, I had some questions about their defense, but they showed up against the Vikings. A shutout through the first 3 quarters. Augie's last touchdown came with 6 seconds left against the backup. St. Cloud State's defense showed athleticism and, more importantly, the playmaking ability to complement an offense that's as balanced as can be right now. They have 704 rushing yards and 738 passing yards through 4 games. And as for the Bulldogs, we mentioned their big win at Wayne State in overtime. They need to play better at home. Their 2 wins are on the road. Their 2 losses are in Duluth. So the win over Wayne State, plus having the time to get over the injuries to some key players, should give UMD some confidence, like I mentioned earlier. Now the question is, can they regain the form that we're used to seeing from a Minnesota Duluth team that's typically been at the top of the conference, or is St. Cloud State the new front runner and this is simply a rebuilding or transition season for UMD? There's a lot of interesting subplots in this game, Kelly, and it's the first ever Battle of the Bone. They have a traveling trophy now between UMD and St. Cloud State. Bulldogs and Huskies battle for the bone.
Oh,
it makes sense.
Oh my goodness.
It's a rivalry that goes back to the 1930s, but they finally have a traveling trophy to go with it.
Oh, well, that's awesome. Well, that's our Thursday game, but this Saturday we have 2 games for you on Midco Sports Network. Minot State at UMary is the Battle of the Big Lake. So what are your thoughts on that matchup?
Well, obviously both teams are 0-4 right now, so someone's going to have to get off the schneid. I've seen both teams already this season, and I still think there's talent on both sides from individual standpoints. The problem is that neither team is simply executing as a collective. Starting with the road team in Minot State, new head coach Mike Aldrich, he's wanted to instill a defensive mindset. Through the first 4 games, save for the last one when they gave up 47 to Winona State, they've kind of done that. The defense isn't losing games for Minot State. They still need to come around, but they're not losing games for the Beavers. The offense, however, is just stuck in a rut. Zach Cunha has the ability to make big throws. He's just not doing it consistently enough. I think he needs to keep establishing a rapport with his receivers, and then the Minot State offense can start working and mixing a little run with Larry Overstreet. Now, on the other side for UMary, the triple option, it's what they're committed to. I'm not here to question that. But what I think they need to do more is have a passing throw out of it. That's going to keep defenses honest. You saw at the beginning of the Upper Iowa game right there, they passed on 2 of their first 3 plays and got a big touchdown over the top. They've had one of those over-the-top touchdown passes in each of the last 2 games. but then they go back to trying to force the run. Diversity is key for the Marauders, and overall this matchup for the Big Lake Trophy, it's split 2-2. Mary won the first two, Minot's won the last two. We'll see where the chips fall on Saturday.
Someone's got to win. All right, but then to the game you'll be doing on Saturday, Wayne State at Augustana. Both these teams coming in at 2-2. So what are your initial thoughts on this one?
Well, obviously it's a big key for both teams, and Wayne State needs to pick up the pieces after that heartbreaking loss to UMT. If their 20-yard field goal in overtime doesn't get blocked, we're talking about a 3-1 Wildcat team that's won 3 in a row. That being said, you are what your record is. So Wayne State still needs to shake it off, focus on Augustana. The Wildcats have seen teams win in Kirkby over Stadium, and they know they have the offensive firepower to test a veteran Augustana defense. Now on the other side, the Vikings are the epitome of inconsistency to me. Blowout loss at home to start the season, followed by a close win against a winless team in Minot State in Week 2, followed by an overtime win against one of the better teams in the conference in Bemidji State in Week 3, and then a lightning-delayed struggle against St. Cloud State in Week 4 and a loss. The defense has been solid throughout when they've been able to get off the field. Vikings are going to have to limit the big plays from Wayne State and provide enough time for their offense and Ryan Rubley to operate against a middle-of-the-pack defense from Wayne State. It's an interesting matchup overall. As you mentioned, both teams are 2-2. I think the Wayne State offense versus the Augustana defense is strength versus strength, and whoever wins that matchup is going to end up winning the football game.
All right, exciting matchups all over Midco SN as always. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you.
All right, as we mentioned earlier, David will be on the road calling the St. Cloud State at Minnesota Duluth game live right here on Midco SN. Kickoff for that is set for 7 p.m. We'll have a preview of that later in the week. And the Saturday games, Wayne State at Augie, that's live at 1 p.m. Minot State at UMary over on Midco SN at 2:30. Coming up after the break, it's USD Volleyball Coach Talk. Hear from Leanne Williamson about the defending conference champs. And then later in the show, we have a little high school volleyball highlights and analysis from the Pentagon this past weekend. You're watching Midco Sports Tonight.